Webinar will be starting shortly. Just got some church bells going. When they stop going, we will start. Give people a little bit of time to get joined, sat down, popcorn, etc.
It's a very grand entrance with church bells in the background.
Oh, you know, we like to please. So, hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to this product demo showing you the latest, greatest advancements and AI, easy for me to say, putting my teeth back in, augmented threat modeling with somebody we like to call Jeff. My name's Ryan Thornton. I am your idiot marketer, but I will be guided, aided and abetted by my partner in threat, your head of product marketing, Claire Allen Addy. Say hello, Claire.
Hello, happy to be here.
Wonderful. Never misses a cue. As we move on to the agenda, before I do so, and before anybody starts screaming at me, yes, this webinar will be recorded and will wing its way to you to the email address that you registered with. So before an ado has been in any way furthered, we've got a lot to cover, and let's see what that lot to cover is. We will start with an intro and a welcome. That box has been ticked. Why have we changed? The reasons behind it. Then, as night follows day, we'll show you what is new in the product, as well as a little bit of an introduction to our new AI assistant, Jeff, and then what hasn't changed. The journey, why we have made these changes. So we've looked at user feedback. You want to give you the best UX, UI, we've concentrated on testing AI and machine learning systems, on being able to create threat models, having our own library for that. Now we're looking at augmenting threat modeling itself with AI. It is a tool. It still needs you in the driving seat. It is still your threat model after all. But that augmentation, being able to bring much greater scale and get threat modeling quicker. And also, the community edition deserves things too. So we've put in 3 threat models now to give something back. We do want the world threat modeling. So in the community edition, you can use it in a meaningful way to create 3 threat models so that we can ensure that the world's software is built securely. Finally, we've gone through a process of decoupling the front and back end. For any developer I've spoken to who's gone through that process, there is a vigor in them as their life becomes much easier and things get produced lots faster. Why am I saying this? Just to let you know that this is the beginning, and this is opening up our productivity even more so that we can deliver more faster for all our customers, prospects, and anybody on the community edition. With that, I will continue to drive the slides, but I shall pass over to the aforementioned wonderful Claire.
Very generous of you. Thank you, Ryan. So continuing with what Ryan has said, I think the song Better, Faster, Stronger seems to come to mind from everything you were saying. We already had a really great threat modeling tool, but we wanted to make it much better. And so in a second, I will open the instance, but here's a little bit of what has changed, what we'll cover here. So threats and countermeasures, there's been quite a change up on the view. We've now got hundreds of V2 components. They've got enhanced risk patterns, so that gives you greater accuracy. And they've also been mapped to Stride LM, and MITRE frameworks. And then just generally speaking, we've wanted to make a more logical navigation, a better UI, a better experience overall. And hopefully you'll see that in just a second. And then new ways to diagram with the aforementioned Jeff, our AI assistant, as well as templates. And what hasn't changed, we will cover in the sense that you've still got loads of great functionality that was there before. Thanks, Ryan. Please jump along. And then who is Jeff? If you hadn't heard of Jeff before today, then this is Jeff, our brand new AI assistant. And if you're wondering why we've represented this with a pig, well, 1 in 3 little pigs threat model. And that is the background of where this design came from. It is now available in the product today. And yes, as Ryan said, it's also included in Community Edition because we don't feel that a lack of budget, resources, or experience should hold you back from your threat modeling. Okay, I will show the demo already. Let me share my screen. Desktop 2. Okay, can you see that, Ryan?
I can indeed.
Brilliant, thank you. So here's one I made earlier. Let's jump in here. So if we start with the diagram. So firstly, just wanted to recap. I mean, perhaps you listening are an existing user, have used IriusRisk before. Maybe this is the first interaction you've had. So we've had the ability to import previous file types for a while now, but I'll just recap what those are. So you can use infrastructure as code for your Terraform and CloudFormation. You can also utilize other diagramming tools such as Microsoft Visio, Microsoft Threat Modeling Tool, Lucidchart, and Draw.io, as our tool is built on Draw.io. You can also start from scratch if that is your preferred approach, if you just really love building out diagrams. And then equally, there's templates and you can use questionnaires. I've got questionnaires disabled on this particular instance, but if you want to build it that way, you can do it as well. So just wanted to recap that all of that is still available. You can do so, but we've made some improvements. So we've got lots of templates available to choose. You can click to find out more. And then when you're ready to import, then you'll be able to hit the import button. It's telling me it's out of sync, so I was making some edits to it earlier and I hadn't updated. Don't worry about that. But this will be blue and you can import and then it generates the diagram for you. You can even search if you wanted something AWS and see what's available. You can also import your own, which is quite handy as well if there's an already existing structure that you'd like to use. And then Jeff will cover at the end, but obviously the newest kind of star of the show is Jeff that kind of aids you in your diagramming as well. So we'll cover that in a little while. Now, as you can see here, this is a very basic SAS model that I have created. And some of the UI improvements we alluded to earlier include things like the component questionnaire sliding in. Previously, a lot of the ways you needed to annotate, it took you away from these screens. And the feedback that we had was that wasn't actually that useful because people wanted to remain on what they were building and what they were doing. And to remain focused, they didn't want to be navigating to other areas. So this is something that we've improved. And no matter what you're navigating to, so if you want to see the details and perhaps add some annotation there, you can. And all of that happens from the slide in. So it just kind of is a better look and feel, a better experience overall. And then if you did want to annotate further, you can answer questions about the component. So perhaps this is storing and processing data, you hit next. And depending what you're answering, sometimes more questions will come up as a result. You hit save, and then that will be reflected within the diagram as well. Same goes for data flows. Perhaps you want to say it's got two-factor authentication, save. There's lots of options to annotate as you see fit. In addition, if you're in the middle of building this and perhaps you've selected some of your components either via the search or you're going to a specific area to find, you can expand this further with this little button in the right-hand corner just to maximize that canvas space, which is really handy, especially as a lot of our developers that use the products have got massive screens at home. We've joined some calls with them, they've got enormous screens, so it's great for them to be able to maximize that further. Okay, now you've built your diagram. I appreciate this is a basic one, but the processes are all the same. Now, if we head over to threats and countermeasures, if you used IriusRisk previously, these would have been separated. Now they've been grouped together. And this is very much intentional because even though threats are important, you need to know where your threats and your weaknesses are, because we also have CWEs, common weakness enumerations as well on here. The main focus are the security controls, the countermeasures. So we've done this to increase the focus on the actions you need to take to mitigate the risks. That's why this has happened. But the threats are still important. And so if we pick one over here, so if we expand the API endpoint, this is what I mentioned earlier about now these are mapped to Stride, and then you can expand. So that's only got one in there. This has got three. Let's expand information disclosure. And you can see there are two identified as high priority, one as medium, and then one as low priority. And then if we click on this, we can see that we have 3 different threats. So Oh, and then if you want to see further details, you can come out in here. You can flatten the view if you prefer to see them all together. I prefer to have them separated. I find it easier to view and expand out. And then what you can do in addition is change your custom view. So perhaps for your particular role, you just want to see test results that are about to expire. I don't have any in here right now, but if I did, then it would come up. I'll go back to the all countermeasures view here. I'm just going to expand on this. Now, if I have a look here, we've got one that's medium, one that's high. I can have a look at the additional threat details on here. This gives me some additional context, which is really useful. The description, this has also had a bit of an update to speak in a language that is useful for both development and security teams, because previously we weren't kind of tailoring to both of those. So there's a lot of info in here, potential attack scenarios, impacts, and so on. The CWEs that I mentioned, these get mapped as well. And then at the top, the high risk that abbreviates into the smaller arrows is here. And of course, at the moment, this is also telling me this risk is exposed. Now, if you had greater context for what you're building and you actually deem this acceptable, you can accept the risk at this point, and equally you can mark it not applicable. I'm not going to do either of those right now, but I will show you some other actions shortly. And then the Stride LM that was mentioned, this will also be mapped here. And then here are your MITRE references. So even though for this example, I'm pretty sure, yeah, they're all MITRE ATT&CK, there aren't any, there's no MITRE Atlas. If it was relevant to what we were building, that would come up as well. And then these fields already existed within IriusRisk. So you still have CIA, you still got your risk summaries, your testing states. So if there had been tests or partial tests, this would be reflected as a status as well. Oh, sorry, here we go. So if we have a look at what's going on the right, it says there are 31 countermeasures in total. And this may look like a very simple status bar, but it's really quite helpful because it shows you as you make progress how many countermeasures have been implemented. Now, of course, at the moment, I've only got 2 that are required. And so maybe this one, for example, because it is high risk, perhaps I want to go and make that one a required, put it into a required state. So I can do that with these bulk actions. There's lots you can do here, change priority, put to mark not applicable, rejects, and so on. I'm going to put this one as required. And then you'll see it jump up into the required section in a moment. There we go. And then if I just do a couple more, let's see. What's this one? Yeah, that's a high as well. So if I do the same for this, I'll do that from here as well. If I only had one, it's probably not worth using the bulk countermeasure. And that is just updating too. And then if I remove, I've just removed the filter at the top there. So obviously still 31 in total, but now we've got 3 in required. So if you notice, this has actually reduced because of course the number of security controls we need to take has increased. Now you can also go even further because I appreciate this is a basic threat model and perhaps what you were building is more complicated and maybe you'll get 100 countermeasures back or even more. Maybe there's a particular standard that you need to conform to for your compliance teams. Let's say this is a financial application, so we're going to apply PCI DSS. Now, we've still got 1 as required out of those 4 that we've moved into the category. However, there are now 4 new ones that have been identified from that overall list of 31 that is telling me we're not complying with that standard. And so if you want to comply with it, you need to move these into the required states. So it's just confirming, do I want to take this action? Yes, please. There we go, it's happened straight away. So now we've moved from the non-compliant into required. And so I can just focus on mitigating these risks because we know not all risks can be mitigated. You have to draw a line somewhere. So this allows us to give greater focus to what we're doing. Now, as a next step, let's take that API endpoint. Now, I would like to create a new issue in my issue tracker. Now, this isn't something new. It's just the UI for this is refined and the UI has kind of been improved for users to do this. But we've been able to integrate with issue trackers for ages. So we can, out of the box, do it with CA Rally, Azure DevOps, Jira, and ServiceNow. Jira is my favorite, so I am going to choose Jira. It's going to create an issue for me. Now you see it's already got a reference here. Don't worry that it says David. I'm using my colleague's Jira. Obviously, this will have more relevance depending on your team name and what you're using. Now, this has created the task straight away in Jira, which is really helpful. And because we've got the bidirectional integration, I'm just going to type a note in here. It's a note for you lot on the call. Thanks for coming. And then let's say I've done some important work. I can now mark this as done. This is set by default to update I think it's about every 5 minutes. So I'll sync this manually so that it shows. And you'll see this change to 1 as implemented. There we go. So now we're beginning to see this bar will move along as that happens. Obviously, you're able to go back and see what's left to do. If we were to change the standard, if we were to change the view, then all of this we can filter further based upon what we need and what actions we're looking to take. So that's just a few ways that we've made improvements. And then in addition, if you notice it says stage 1 up here, what you can do is you can configure in the background. Now, there's a lot you can configure in IriusRisk, so that probably needs its own webinar and its own demo to show you all of the capability. But you can create a workflow with various stages depending on what you as an organization need. So for example, stage 1 may be when you're in progress, and then stage 2, you may want to lock the threat model while it goes for a review, and then perhaps stage 3 is sign off. You can also manually lock the threat model here. Again, if say you wanted it to be reviewed before anyone else in the team could make changes. You have to be an admin sometimes for some of these actions, but at least it's helpful if you're a team lead, you lock that threat model. If someone within your team with lesser permissions goes in to change it, they won't be able to. So these are just some helpful things to be aware of. Now, what else? I've got a whole list here of things to cover. We've done the V2 components. One thing that might be useful to know, because it's over in this menu, is to see version history. Now, I think it's because I haven't updated the diagram. I'll do it in a second. So if I put 2 down here, all this is a snapshot of what your diagram looked like based upon iterations that have happened. This is also very helpful if you want to see the evolution of your threat model. Again, it's just a snapshot, but when you've got complex architecture and you want to go back and see what a previous version was, or perhaps there was a change that you weren't quite sure should have happened, then you can go back and see that in here, which is quite handy. And then you can also copy the project link from these 3 ellipses. You can access reports, export the entire data model. Not all threat modeling tools allow you to do that either. Sometimes you can just get the diagram, so you'll have an XML file of the diagram, but not the threats and countermeasures. We allow you to export everything. So if you wanted to take some threat intelligence and utilize it in another way, you're able to do so. For example, we partner with Armor Code, and they're able to ingest data from us into their ASPM platform for additional context. And then there are some other customers that use it within other kind of database tools. For example, Power BI is a popular one, and they actually export data from us, and then they use that for compliance and management teams as their single source of truth. So there's lots of capability in here that I just wanted to mention. General UI, done issue trackers, I think. And then this hasn't changed too much, this screen, but it's got some helpful information. Of course, you've got your diagram at the top. You've got your overall risk score, which will reduce the more action you take from your countermeasures. So the more you implement, of course, the lower the risk of your threat model overall. So it's handy to come back and check in here. Obviously, your total number of threats, your countermeasures, your distribution of risk. Of course, here we've implemented 2. We moved 5 or 6 it was to required, and then the rest are recommended. We haven't done any test results yet, so of course that's why they're all in not tested. But again, this is quite a helpful window if you just want to see how everything is going. And we're almost wrapping up before we feature Jeff. Just going back to the menu here. Yeah, so obviously here's all of the previous diagrams that have been created, and here are the stages, like I mentioned. So we've got a few that are now locked and in review, some that are at the approval stage. Up here is where you would import a project, such as another XML file or a template and so on. And again, if you were previously using us, you'll notice that the menus at the top have been consolidated as well. So we've just had like a really good tidy up within here so that you can find what you need much more easily, whether it is the security content, perhaps you want to add your own risk pattern library, you can do so. Perhaps you want to edit the risk calculation or even objects, you can create your own custom components, your own trust zones, add your own level of trust rating. All of these things that are still possible. We haven't changed any of that. It's just we've tried to make the flow of finding this information much quicker, much easier. And the last thing I will say, my threat model is just updating, only because this has come up a few times around nesting components and nesting threat models and that type of thing. What you can do is if you've created, say, a microservice as a threat model, you can actually save that as a component. So IriusRisk will deem that as a component, and then you can embed that microservice into larger architecture, which is helpful if you need to go to this level and have a look at your microservice and all of the risks. Maybe you've got loads of them depending on your industry, but then equally, you need to look at your architecture overall and bring them all together. So I just wanted to mention that that is a way that we're able to do that. And with that, yep, those were the key things on the list. There have been other changes, and as I say, the configurable options in IriusRisk are huge. So we'll do that at a separate time. If you have got other questions about what's new in our tool, let us know. If you're an existing user, you can speak to your customer success manager. And if you're just interested to find out more, then you're very welcome to request a demo at any time. And I think, are we good, Ryan? Shall I move on to community?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's good to fire up the community instance to show that we've got AI capabilities in there.
Yes.
And while you're doing so, just reiterate, this is a whistle-stop tour. You're not getting chapter and verse, but you do know how to get in contact with us and the appropriate channels if you do want any further information. It's not a complete look behind the kimono, but just an amuse-bouche to whet your appetite and perhaps get more information from the appropriate channels. And I think you're good.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. So I've just logged into Community Edition. And as Ryan said at the start, we do believe that the freemium version of our tool deserves love as well. So it very much is the same tool. And it used to be you could only create one threat model, and we got feedback that that wasn't quite enough. So there's now 3. You can see I'm using 2 out of 3. This is actually another one I made earlier, utilizing Jeff from text. So you'll see this little button with the pig, with Jeff, model with AI. And, it's saying in here, you can use documentation, user stories, source code, even an audio transcription. All of these things, that they work brilliantly, and you just iterate as you go. If you're still not really sure where to get started, we kind of have these use cases, if you will, that you can start with. But I'm just going to paste in some code for a banking solution. And at the moment, sifting through the sounds of data. Yeah, so Jeff is doing a lot right now. It's sending this data to the LLM for processing. And what it will do is Jeff will come back to me saying, are these the correct components to build what you're looking for? And you can further iterate. You can say yes, or if it gets something wrong, then of course you can go back and forth as required. But as you can see, this is literally just code that I've pasted in that it's working with. And here we go. So based upon the provided scenario, this is what it's suggesting it would look like. And what it's done is it's kind of mapped some components for me. And now it's asking, do I want to proceed? I don't know about you. Whenever I interact with AI, I feel like you have to be polite. Can't respond without please and thank yous, otherwise I'm going to be on a hit list in the future. So Jeff is now analyzing the scenario, and what it's doing now is it will align these components with IriusRisk components, which is really smart. So even though we're interacting here, it's now checking across into IriusRisk, and it's going to align them. And again, it will ask for feedback and ask if it's doing the right thing or not. It seems like it's being inactive, but it's truly not. This is at the point where it's doing complex analysis, generation tasks, and then it will prompt me as the user to review, make the changes, and so on. So it will come up in just a second. And you'll notice when it comes back that you'll still get the list of components, but it will have begun to kind of merge them with what we call these. You know, maybe we've got a slightly different name for authentication service within IriusRisk. So here we go. Yeah, so this is where it started aligning. You see, see across here and here. Yes, go ahead. So now it's asking, do you want to proceed and generate the threat model using IriusRisk? So it's done the mapping, it's worked that out, and now the diagram is approved, if you will. It's going to request additional additional information from the IriusRisk database, and it's then going to match those across and refine the diagram. And then what will happen is, whilst it's digging up a response, in a moment you'll then see a recognizable IriusRisk diagram or mock-up, and it just gives it a placeholder name with like 2 random words, which you can change. And when that comes back, we'll actually be able to open the threat model in IriusRisk, which is very cool.
Jeff's also interacting with Sod's Law at the moment, or Murphy's Law, by deciding to be slow whenever there's a webinar on.
Oh, of course, yeah. And based upon my internet connection as well. So someone's asked a question just while Jeff is working hard in the background. Is the code we paste into Jeff kept proprietary to us, or does it become part of IriusRisk LLM? So Jeff is built upon, there we go, OpenAI. So now anything you put into Jeff, that kind of stays within OpenAI. Oh, pardon?
So the answer to this, I think, is Jeff has got a terrible memory. It only lasts for one conversation, and then the next time you do anything, it's forgotten all that code and doesn't keep it. So it only uses it the one time, and then you'd need to start again from the beginning to be able to do it, to overcome some of the problems I think that the question might be alluding to. Do you think I've answered that question correctly there, Claire?
I think so. Obviously, if not, that person can please shout. You came through as anonymous, so I'm not sure who asked, but there's also some misconception around. So basically, we use the LLM here, but then we go into IriusRisk. So any threats and countermeasures that are identified, if I open the project, this is now in IriusRisk. This is not Jeff. So just to make that very clear, that anything associated here in regards to your system, Jeff doesn't know the threats and countermeasures. Jeff's job is just to try and help you jump several steps forward with your diagram, with what you're building. Jeff doesn't know the context surrounding it, just in case anyone was wondering that. Now here we go. This is the random name I mentioned, so we won't worry about that. But as you can see, it has built what was asked for. It might be that you want to change the trust zone, or maybe the database service sits in its own trust zone and you might want to move that over here. But otherwise, it's done what we've asked. And then here we go. It's got the countermeasures, it's got the threats, and basically everything that we've shown you, changing the views, applying a standard, all of this can still be done. It's exactly the same. It's just instead of you building that diagram or maybe importing it from Lucidchart, Jeff has supported you to build that. You have still been in that driving seat. You've been in control. You've given the information and the context. So yeah, all of it is the same. So yeah, we're really pleased with Jeff, because the feedback has been that the diagramming part takes a long time, and time to value is really important when you've spent your budget on security, and we completely understand that. And this really is just the beginning. We are just scratching the surface with this capability. So we're really excited to share this with you, and even more excited to show more capability in the really near future as well. So I hope that was useful. I'm just going to check if there were any questions. The others? Not looking like there are. No, can't see anything else. Last chance if anyone wanted to have any last moment questions or comments. We will stay on for a few moments. No. Okay, well, as Ryan said at the start, this has been recorded, so we'll get that uploaded this week, and then that will be shared. It will also be available on our YouTube channel if you wanted to rewatch, because there was a part you thought was really exciting, or if you want to share it with the rest of your team. And yeah, thank you so much for joining. It's always great to have you here, and any feedback is really welcome. And we'll see you on another webinar really soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, Ryan. Bye.